Her gün
Those who embark on a journey for innovation every day, those who ask, question, push the limits, those who take a different perspective, those who develop methods in education, those who change the concepts in culture, those who present brand new solutions in healthcare, those who design a better world for all of us always. This is the award for them. Distinguished viewers, welcome to the 21st Vehbi Koç Commemoration and Award Ceremony. Today, we are at one of the healthcare institutions under the roof of the Vehbi Koç Foundation, the Koç University Hospital. Contemporary medical methods are applied in our hospital, and it is a hospital operating as an education and research hospital. It has a health sciences campus, nursing school, medical school, research lab, and an advanced learning and simulation center. I'm Edil Bilgen. I am a 4th grade student in this valuable institution. And this year's Vehbi Koç Award will meet its recipient in the area of medicine briefly. Before we continue with our ceremony, I would like to thank all of our health experts who put their heart and soul into doing their work throughout the pandemic. Distinguished guests, our founder, Vehbi Koç, who has taken an important role in the development of our country, believed that everyone had an important role in the development of our country, and he believed that social aid should be lasting, and that's why he established the Vehbi Koç Foundation. And he dedicated his life to this country and the people of this country, and we commemorate him with love and respect on the 26th anniversary of his death. Education, health, culture are the most fundamental needs of a contemporary and developing Turkey. And Vehbi Koç set an example to philanthropists in this area. And he turned all of his institutions into centers of excellence and set an example to society. And the institutions of this foundation shed light upon education, culture, and healthcare in our country. And the Vehbi Koç Foundation also serves the society with its wide-scale projects. Now, come and let's watch our short video about this foundation. I am establishing this foundation so that the aid and support I provide is maintained after my death for the benefit of the Turkish society. People who believe in their country, people who exist with their country, and people who work selflessly for the people of their country. This is the story of such a philosophy. Turkey's first private foundation has a proud story that has reached our day. Supporting education is our duty, said those who took on the courage to provide education. This is the story of schools that raised future generations. This is the story of people who created success stories in 28 years and those who maintained this success. It is the story of those who carried the light of education all over the country. And it is the story of those who pioneered the opening of schools that would shed light upon the future of our country. And it is the story of those who held teachers in high esteem. It is the story of those who carried hope to the future. It is the story of those who said the health of a society will carry a society into the future. And it is also the story of those who gave everything they got out of healthcare back into the healthcare system. And it is the story of those who dedicate themselves to their profession and to providing service. Without culture and art, our duties would be incomplete, they said. It is the story of the people who deemed this as a principle. And it is a story of those who said introducing our culture is a binding duty. It is the story of those who united 20,000 artworks with society. It is the story of those who thought about what they could do in the area of culture and art. And it is the story of those who said, we need to pioneer in this area. It is the story of those who deemed the will of its founder a legacy. It is the story of those who took on the duty to provide social benefit on the tracks of Vehbi Koç. It is a story of those who say, I exist only if my country does. The foundation has a principle of providing equal opportunities in the area of education, healthcare, and culture, and this award represents this principle, and it is a significant legacy of Vehbi Koç, and it's awarded to recipients who created value and made achievements in the national and international arena. And today, in its 21st year, the Vehbi Koç Award is about to meet its recipient in the area of healthcare. We know that healthcare is very important for the maintenance of life, for saving life, and during these challenging days, we understand the importance of activities in the healthcare area even better. And from doctors to nurses to ER professionals, we are proud of all of them. We are very happy to have them with us. In preventing the spreading of diseases, in working for smart solutions for diagnosis and treatment, we are grateful to our science people. Before presenting this year's awards, let's remember the previous recipients who received this award since 2002. Contribution to culture, support to education, adding value to healthcare. Those who question the rules, those who challenge our perspectives, those who provoke our curiosity. They changed things, they transformed things, they created things, and they maintained lives, and they contributed to the development of Turkey. We didn't provide them with an award, but they became our award with their existence. Supporting those who lead the way is our duty forever. These names realized their dreams after the award they received, and they continue to mark their names under important achievements and provide contribution to humanity. I would like to congratulate all recipients of this award and thank them for the value they have created. Dear viewers, in 2022, this award will be given in the area of health, and we have a selection committee made up of experts I'd like to introduce to you. The chairperson of the selection committee, Professor Mehmet Toner, members, Professor Mehmet Öztürk, Professor Banu Onaral, Professor Ayşenil Belger, Professor Hülya Kayserili Karabey. We would like to thank them for their contributions. Distinguished viewers, we are approaching that big moment of our ceremony. Now I would like to invite the chairman of Koç Holding, Mr. Ömer Koç, to deliver a speech and present the award. Distinguished viewers, this year we will be presenting the 21st Vehbi Koç Award, and we are very happy to be with you at this ceremony, although it is in the digital environment. Our late founder, Vehbi Koç, embarked on his journey saying, "My country first," and he put a lot of effort into his ideals. And this is an opportunity for us to remember those ideals. And unfortunately, for the second time, due to the pandemic, we are not able to carry out this ceremony face to face. However, we are hoping that as of next year, we will be able to get together once again. For the past 2 decades, global poverty has increased, and the gap between countries has increased, and the damage created on countries' economies and the social injustice is going to be a problem that will require a solution. And people's despair has to be taken into account to build a future with peace. There are extraordinary developments, dazzling, stunning developments that are going on across the country. And we are talking about space tourism in our day. But we also saw that the existence of humanity on Earth is very vulnerable with the pandemic. For that reason, we need to be grounded and we need to make sure we don't return to the past in certain areas. For example, with the lessons we took from this painful experience, we definitely need to build a better coordinated healthcare system. And when we look at it as a sector, we see that healthcare is equivalent to around 10% of the global economy, and there is going to be a very different future in this area. In homes and workplaces, personalized healthcare is coming into play. Less time is being spent in hospitals, and digital technologies are gaining an increasing role in diagnosis and treatment. And there are patients made up of conscious people who try to prevent diseases before they happen. And we need to take into account the increasing inequalities as well. There is high technology that is creating new business models, but also we need to make sure that access to quality healthcare is increasing, and we need to make sure that we contribute to social prosperity in this sense. And as the Vehbi Koç Foundation, we are trying to provide a quality service befitting our people, and we are taking necessary steps towards the future. In all areas that we assume responsibility, we try to ensure that we reach better tomorrows, and we know that a qualified human resource is very important in that context. And for that reason, we are providing the Vehbi Koç Award in the area of health this year, and I would like to share the reasoning of our committee. One of the most important qualities of this person who had groundbreaking studies in the area of biology and medicine is the fact that she made these achievements as the first person who went to college from her family and as a person who completed all her basic studies in Turkey as a science woman. Distinguished viewers, the recipient of the 2022 Vehbi Koç Award is someone who pioneered computational, molecular, and systems biology studies, and she provided grounds for many other developments with these activities. Ordinary Professor Yvette Bahar. Now let's take a look at the short video we prepared for her. My name is Yvette Bahar. I was born in Istanbul. My mother and father are from Thrace. They were both born in Edirne, and they migrated to Istanbul when they were very young. and for various reasons, they couldn't receive the education they desired. My father dropped out of Kabataş High School and had to work at an early age, and my mom got married at an early age. So they thought we couldn't receive education, but our children should. And they really tried very hard for my brother and myself to receive a good education. In the winter, we lived in Şişli. I went to the Şişli 19 Mayıs primary school. And at that age, I discovered I had an inclination towards mathematics and calculations. And as of 5 years old, I started to receive piano lessons. During high school, I went to the Notre Dame de Sion Girls High School. Very happy years for me. And I graduated at the top of class, and I received awards in two areas, physics and mathematics. And for university, I first selected chemistry, and I wanted to have an academic career. But in my first year, I saw that chemists didn't receive computer classes as opposed to engineers, and I felt that I was falling behind. So I transferred to chemical engineering, and then I got married and had children, and I went back to chemistry, then back to chemical engineering. In the end, I graduated from chemical engineering. I had two sons by the time I graduated. During my graduation ceremony, I was holding the hand of one and carrying the other. That's how I got my diploma. And for 2 years, I was at home and I took care of my children and, played games with them. But after 2 years, I felt the need to continue. So I had my master's degree in chemical engineering, and then at the Istanbul Technical University in the chemistry department in the polymer area, I had my PhD studies. And as soon as I got my PhD degree from the Istanbul Technical University, I became a faculty member at the Boğaziçi University from 86 to 2001 for 15 years. I was a faculty member at the Boğaziçi University. We established the Polymer Research Center, and I was in the administration of that center for many years, and we raised a lot of students. Truly, it really was a center that gave education and set an example for future generations. And my first 5 daughters, my 5 academic daughters, were my students at that time. Miss Yvette is very hardworking. She works a lot. And at the Polymer Research Center, everyone was working all the time because whenever we walked in, we would see Miss Yvette working. So she would set a great example for us, and she would expect you to be hardworking as well. But she also motivates you greatly. Like, she'll give you a project and she'll say, we're going to be working on this. But the way she puts it, you feel like you should start working right away. And you really feel so motivated. She convinces you that you can do it. And she creates a roadmap for you. She says, this is how you should start. So she prepares you, and she also shows you the way so you can fly with your own 2 wings. She's a great consultant. Yvette was a great role model for everyone in the group. We all loved her very much and respected her very much, and that's still the case for me. I mean, she's one of those few people on my mind. When I'm about to make big decisions, I think to myself, what would she think? Would she support this decision? If I made such a decision. I mean, there are a few people. One is my husband, and the other one is Yvette, and she's such an important role model for me. Yvette is a perfectionist. She's very ambitious. She's very disciplined. And besides that, she's also a very flexible person. Despite the fact that she has rules, she's very humane. And if that wasn't the case, I think it wouldn't be very possible to be successful as an academician. And she has a very heavy work pace, and she expects everyone to work with the same ambition. I met Yvette with the elective course she was giving. It was her first class, her first lecture at college, and her excitement and the topics she covered were very interesting. I got a chance to know her outside of class afterwards as well, and she has a very important role in my decision to pursue an academic career because she's always very excited about science and she loves sharing and she always develops new projects. For Yvette Bahar, there is no problem without a solution. There's always a solution. Well, my PhD dissertation was based on experiments, and at that point, I discovered that experiments were very challenging and that there were a lot of limitations and lack of possibilities. And after I became a faculty member, when we started the Polymer Research Center, I made sure that there were a lot of computers, because a computer infrastructure that you acquire is at international standards. So you're basically on equal grounds with the rest of the world, and it's quite cost efficient. And analyzing materials through simulations on the computer was the route we took. That's how we acquired our information. We had great international studies, and throughout those years, I received the TÜBİTAK Science Award. I think it was 95 or 96. The president of the time, Mr. Süleyman Demirel, presented the award to me, and that was a great honor for me, the TÜBİTAK TUA Science Award. If an old student called and asked for an urgent recommendation letter, she would let go of everything else, and she wouldn't deem it burdensome. She would miss sleep even, and she would put a lot of effort into writing a good recommendation letter. So warm personal ties are indispensable for her. She refers to us as her academic daughters. And Miss Yvette actually has two sons, so that's why she says, "You are my daughters." And she is very warm. We have a very sincere relationship. She always approaches us with great warmth, and we can talk to her about anything. With the discovery of the human genome, there was a brand new need that was revealed. There is a lot of data, and that amount of data cannot be processed with the human brain. It's so intense. And the only way it can be analyzed is through a computer-aided approach. And for that reason, biopolymers or biological molecules, for those who work in the analysis of these with computers, there were a lot of new areas that were created, and institutions in the US tried to attract people who were working in this area. And one of those institutions was the Pittsburgh University. They invited me, and I started a new research center there. I think the fact that the Polymer Research Center in Turkey was successful had an impact on this invitation. And this new center also became very successful, and in about 2-3 years they said, let's transform it into a department. At first I was a little hesitant, but really in 2004 we established this department, which I am still chairing. And then in 1 year's time, we started a new PhD program with Carnegie Mellon, and it was very important to raise students, researchers, while you are conducting research. So when I came to the medical school in Pittsburgh, I discovered that there were no well-read students who could work in my laboratory. And the solution for that was to provide the education ourselves and establish a new program. And the Carnegie Mellon University, especially in the area of computer sciences, robotics, engineering, physics, and mathematics, they're very strong. So this PhD program was a first for both universities, a joint program. And we design drugs on the computer, basically. For example, we look at the interactions between molecules, and we observe their interactions on the screen, and we try to identify the target areas and where we should ensure that the drugs bond so we can change the way the proteins work, or we can stop the toxic proteins. That's what we focus on. I focused on two main areas. One is the area of brain, neurodegenerative diseases, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, at older ages, those diseases that create or that are revealed with deterioration of brain cells. And I also work in the area of cancer biology, how tumors grow and what kind of cellular interactions increase the speed of this growth or decrease the speed of this growth. And again, which target proteins we should take into consideration and which drugs need to be developed. So again, we work in drug design, and especially for breast cancer.
In the days before Yvette's work, proteins were thought of as rigid objects, small miniature rigid objects, and they just had you take one snapshot and you would see the whole story. Now, thanks to Yvette and thanks to her understanding of motions, what we know is much more clearly is that they move, and the ways that they move are important for the ways that they function. And so each protein has its own way of moving, and that way of moving is important. You can think of this one way, if you like, is thinking about trees in the wind. One tree will blow a certain way in winds, and another tree will blow a different way in the winds. And the same thing is true with proteins. You have 20,000 different proteins in your body, and each one of them moves and wiggles in a different way, and so each one also performs a function in a different way. And that's a very important insight for people trying to understand biology, biomedicine, and drug discovery.
Dr. Bahar has a very interesting physics approach to biological problems, and has been working, among other things, in understanding the physical movements of molecules using network-based approaches that identify the parts of molecules that are key for allowing flexibility or rigidity or cooperative movements. I got to learn more about these approaches in the context of being on one of her PhD students' committee, and I was very inspired by this work.
Moshe Arditi approached us and said about this COVID and the reaction in children. I mean, why do they have such a severe reaction? I mean, some children have fatal reactions, and also some reactions can be seen in other patients who have a severe attack of the disease. And basically what we observe in these patients is what we call a toxic shock. So superantigens, these molecules, create a reaction. That's what this reminds me of, he said. There is a new disease, multi-system inflammatory disease, that we see in children, and it's a very severe disease in children. It's observed rarely, but of course I took a great interest in this, and when I called Yvette about it, I said that this was very similar to the toxic shock disease, and the toxic shock disease was created specifically by certain toxins. And I asked if maybe in COVID there could be such a toxin. Now, what is a toxic shock? It is basically the overreaction of the immune system. Currently, there are 4 labs who are working on this study jointly, 3 in the US and 1 in Germany. And the starting point of these studies is the observations we had in our simulations, the estimations we've made, and now these estimations are being tested with experiments.
We constantly chat research and life in general. I believe we had at least 5,000 email exchanges over the past 20 years, where I have been that lucky to continuously learn from this warm and wise scientist. So I really get a chance to know how hard she works, how carefully she thinks, and how warm she treats people. All the way till she received all these recognitions, including being an NAS member in the States. I believe she fully deserves all these highest honors, recognitions that well resonate her scientific achievement and her nourishment of the future generation of scientists.
Ödülün verdiği moral destekle
With the moral support this award gives me, I will now work with greater enthusiasm on what I've already been working with enthusiasm. And a mission I have is to be able to set an example to future generations, to shed light upon their path, and basically to contribute to the development of the talents they already have. And for teenage girls, and especially those who want to pursue an academic career, who want to pursue the science world in the future, there is something I want to emphasize. If you desire something, and if you put in the effort necessary to make the achievement, there is nothing you cannot accomplish. You just need to stand up to the setbacks you face, and you need to pursue your path and have the determination to do so. And I would like to thank the Koç family, the administrators of the Koç Foundation, the members of the selection committee for honoring me with this award. And receiving this award from the Koç family or the Koç Foundation is also very meaningful because Mr. Vehbi Koç always marked his name under novelties, under firsts. Just like a science person, he was very innovative, very creative. And more importantly, the Koç Foundation attaches great importance to education, art, and health. For example, the Saad Berkan'ın Museum, the Koç University, American Hospital. I mean, they always try to do the best in all areas they operate in. So, an institution who attaches great importance to excellence, I mean, them deeming me worthy of this award is a great honor. Distinguished guests, following this influential life story, it is an honor for me to give the award to the recipient of this year's Vehbi Koç Award, Ms. Yvette Bahar. She will be addressing us from the Pittsburgh University in the US. The floor is yours. Distinguished viewers, I would like to greet you all. I am addressing you from a different time zone, kilometers away from my office. And I may be a little excited. You may feel my happiness throughout my speech, so I apologize in advance. And I am very honored to be deemed worthy of this award, who is named after the late Vehbi Koç. Mr. Vehbi Koç has contributed to the Turkish economy as a very innovative businessman. And besides that, with his vision, his foresightedness, he has had a great impact on many people in society, and he has set an example. More importantly, he emphasized the importance of education, art, and health in the advancement of a society, and raising young people in this area was something he deemed as a binding duty. And in my speech today, if I am able to inspire science people, and especially science women, and if I can contribute to Mr. Vehbi Koç's vision in that sense, I will be very happy. So without further ado, I'd like to share my researches that I've conducted over the years with you. Now, as you know, we try to analyze how biological systems work through computers, and we try to identify drugs or design drugs to fix the genetic disorders. So with computer technology, we work in the simulation of biomolecular systems, and I started with polymers. Now they are macromolecules, as you can see. For example, polystyrene is basically created through the bonding of many styrenes. It's a polymer that is created. It is used for various purposes like packaging material, styrofoam, plastic cups, etc. And below you see other polymer materials, for example, Teflon, or this cross-bonded network structures, and they create the essence of rubber-like materials. And one of my professors, Burak Erman, is the pioneer in this area. And again, this is also used in various areas in our lives, car tires particularly. So what we do is through computer technology, we try to discover how polymers behave. And instead of the what question, we ask the why question. We try to understand how their structures changed and what conditions, and the connections between the molecular structure and the material qualities. So in synthetic polymer and biological polymer, as you can see here, they have the same atoms, so the same physics and chemistry rules apply. So basically, many theories we develop for synthetic polymers can be applied to biological polymers as well. And as of '93, this became my interest area even more, with proteins and protein structures and their behaviors. So I became keen on that, because proteins are also polymers. They're biopolymers. But the most important difference, I guess, is that they have 20 different building blocks, and they create very stable structures. So as I was analyzing proteins and as I was working with my students, in the summer I would go to NIH and I would try to develop myself. NIH is the National Institute of Health in the US, and it is one of the leading research institutions in this area. So from materials science, I moved to molecular biophysics with these activities. And one of the most important studies we had in this area was published in '97. It's the elastic network model, the Gaussian network model. We worked together with the Polymer Research Center members and faculty members of Boğaziçi University. And in 4 years, we had a further reinforced model, the anisotrophic network model. So what is the benefit of this model? Now, through such models, we are able to analyze the structures of proteins in more detail. In conventional approaches, it is always thought of a one-dimensional alphabet. If you go a little further, you look at the three-dimensional interactions. But these interactions is only a small part of the protein complex. And proteins are not stable. They are constantly moving. So through these elastic network models, we were able to discover how proteins behave, just like molecular machines, how they change form according to what rules or what are their weak points, and how can we modify those with drugs. That's what we started to discover. And I would like to place particular focus on this. The second half of the 20th century is seen as a polymer age, and Paul Fleury, who is a pioneer in this area, had some textbooks that he wrote, and he worked on the science of such materials. And with 2000, the first version of the human genome was published, and it was a revolution in biology. Both Science and Nature magazines carried it to their covers simultaneously. So what does this mean, the identification of the genome? Now, the human DNA is also a polymer, and it has 3 billion building blocks, and they're called A, T, G, and C. They're in couples on the DNA molecule. And their sequencing basically identifies your genetic structure, because those create your genes. And if there is any deterioration in the sequencing, or if there's any difference, it creates the differences between us. And that's actually only 1% of 1 per 1,000. But still, it tells us something about how we can be prone to certain diseases and how we react to certain drugs. That's all about our genetic structure. And with the identification of the genome, much more solidly, we had the chance to analyze the diseases people are prone to. And of course, this led to a great data explosion. And in medicine and biology, data processing methods and artificial intelligence methods came into play. And my transfer to Pittsburgh University coincides with this time. In 2001, I came to the Pittsburgh University Medical School, and one of the first things we did was we had a joint program with Carnegie Mellon, a PhD program. Now, none of us were trained in this area, but we wrote our textbooks ourselves, and we taught our students, and we continued to intensely conduct researches, especially with those elastic network structures. And of course, it's not enough to understand how a protein works by itself, because proteins are within a cell. They're all interacting with one another. So the cell, we deem it as similar to a factory, and proteins can be deemed as the machinery, the robots, the workers. The DNA is the manager. It gives out the orders, codes the proteins. And to understand how the cell works, it is not possible to make a simulation of the entire cell. There are billions of molecules, but we are able to analyze certain areas in more detail day by day. And one of the most important qualities is the input and output of that factory, because there are various ions, hormones, drugs that permeate through the cell membrane. This is a neuron, for example, you can see here. And here you see the cell membrane. And that cell membrane is like a wall almost. And there are some proteins, carrier proteins, embedded into that wall. They carry the neurotransmitters. And in the recent years, our lab specifically focused on understanding how neurotransmitters work. And again, you see the cell membrane here, and you can see its thickness, and you see the protein inside that membrane. And through the spaces between the proteins, there are very small molecules, hormones, and drugs that are able to go both ways. And we focused on dopamine to understand how the system works, the dopamine carriers. Now, dopamine, as you know, is the hormone that creates the feeling of pleasure. It is also very important for learning and memory. And here you see the dopamine molecule like a bunch of grapes, purple bunch of grapes. And this is the protein that carries the dopamine. Now, it's very interesting, this mechanism. There is a door that opens outside the cell, and there's another door that opens to inside the cell. And as you can see in this simulation, the dopamine comes in and the external door is closed, and for a while it is in the space between these two doors, and then slowly it moves downwards, and once the internal door opens, it is able to go inside the cell, as you will be able to see. Yes, and now it is inside the cell. But this is only showing us how the dopamine molecule works. But in the synapses, for example, the spaces between the neurons, there are thousands of dopamine molecules that are fired at the same time for the signals to communicate. And we also have simulations at the cellular level like that. So each red point you see here is a dopamine molecule, and we look at how it is transferred, and if it's not transferred as swiftly as needed, and if it piles up in the synapses, because of that pleasure, you start to have addiction problems, for example. You want more of those materials that create that feeling. Or if it is very low concentration, there can be some neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's. So basically, in all systems in biology, you need to find the optimum level of working. I mean, not too fast and not too slow. And also what we always try to do is, at the molecular level, we try to look at the nanometer scale movements, and we try to build the connection between organs. I mean, molecules permeating through the cell membranes, what goes on in the synapses, the neural networks, and various behaviors in the brain anatomy. We try to build bridges. I mean, it is a very important problem everyone is trying to understand. So the reason we want to understand this at the molecular level is to be able to do drug design. Now, we have two methods in drug design. Now, the first one is what we do as we showed you, like the simulations we have. Here you can see a drug that is bonded to a protein and controlling the way it is working. And then there is also the information processing way. So we have a lot of data, as I said. So with all the data we have, we are trying to conduct an analysis, so data-driven analysis. And what I would like to emphasize here specifically is through such studies, we are able to discover that certain drugs that are used for other purposes can now be used for new purposes, or sometimes we discover the adverse effects. And I would like to give you two examples about modeling and simulation. This is our most recent study. Last year and this year we had two articles that were published. The parathyroid hormone receptor activities to be suppressed. That was the drug design we had. Or it is a candidate drug, if I may. Well, why? Because when the this hormone is secreted too much, or if this receptor works very fastly and pumps too much hormone to the body, for example, kidney stones or osteoporosis are diseases that may occur. So to prevent those and to be able to control those, we need to inspect how this receptor works. Here you can see an image of the receptor. And the study we conducted in this area is basically something we developed for other systems as well. It is a multi-phase software that we use. You take the target protein and you look at how it behaves and what type of drug-like components bond in which area, and through a method that we call pharmacophore, we look at the drug banks, screen the drug banks, and identify the drug candidates. And there are various cross-verification protocols that you use as well. And not just that, you also, there are a lot of options. You always try to narrow them down. And we have a newly developed method to discover the most critical areas on the protein. And out of the options that come out of the simulation, we have another screening. And we discover the most sensitive point of this receptor, and we discovered what kind of a drug could bond there. And there are still patent activities going on for this project. And once you find a functioning molecule, then you have the more challenging phase. You need to develop it. You need to make it more effective and powerful. That's where we're at with this project. And let me give you an example from data-driven analysis. Now, after the discovery of the human genome, there was a revolution in medicine, and we have a different perspective on cases. And with the use of these genomic data, and by looking at the genomic structure of patients, and by experts interpreting them, first you try to make a diagnosis and discover the genetic disorder that may be leading to the disease, or you try to discover what kind of treatment would be more beneficial. So we are working very closely with medical professionals in that area. For example, a very important project is the cancer map. What kind of gene disorders lead to what type of cancers? Beyond a map, really, it's like an atlas that is being created. And we have a program that we developed called Rhapsody. And we try to understand what mutations lead to which diseases. When clinicists approach us, they say these are the mutations that we saw in the patient, and most of them are not toxic, but some of them are actually have the properties to create a problem with the way those molecular machines work. So we look at which mutation of which amino acid can lead to pathological results, and we are able to effectively discover this, and we share this information with doctors. And what we do is really only a preliminary screening, and we use machine learning and artificial intelligence methods for this because we make use of an immense amount of data. There are 20,000 mutations and variants in our data bank, and we try to discover if we were able to accurately diagnose if they were pathological or not. And we compared it to other methods, and we saw that compared to other methods, our method has an estimation accuracy which is 83% higher. So this is a software that we use. And in general, people always looked at evolutionary changes in their studies. They looked at, how the amino acids changed during evolution. And with the innovation we introduced, we're not just focusing on the structure, we are looking at its structural dynamics, its working mechanism, and that's how we create our estimations or predictions, and that's what made the difference in making more accurate predictions. And finally, what I'd like to talk about is, now, of course, together with computer technologies, there were a lot of advancements in experimental biology as well, and the DNA is not seen as this long chain anymore. It has a 3D structure. We actually even are able to model the 4D way of how it works, and we see how the chromosomes work in the embryonic cell. There are differences between cells, between DNA molecule cells, not chemical but physical differences that we observe. For example, when you analyze different cell types, and here you can see various cell types, you see that they behave differently to different genes. Some genes are very dynamic, some are static, they don't move at all. And with the movement of these genes, we are able to build a direct connection to how the proteins are created, and that is very important because with the change in qualities of the DNA in 3 dimensions plus 1 time, you are able to build a direct relationship with the qualities of the cells that are being produced, especially for cancer tumor development. This is very important. And for COVID-19, the disease created by the SARS-CoV-2 virus, we implemented this. We looked at the cells of patients, those who caught the SARS-CoV-2 virus. We looked at the protein levels in their cells. We used the RNA-seq mechanism, so basically RNA amounts are being measured, and by looking at those amounts, we were able to see which proteins increased and which decreased, and we looked at how we can reverse that behavior with drugs, and how can we control that entire systems. That was our approach, and while we were doing that, of course, we made use of the methods developed by our lab and the data developed by our lab, the software developed by our lab and other labs. And basically, we discovered a series of drugs that can be repurposed for COVID patients. And it's not just about the discovery of these drugs, but first of all, these drugs were then verified through experiments. You start with hundreds of drugs and you end up with a much smaller amount. And when experimenters looked into it, they discovered that many of these drugs actually stop the infection. And most importantly, which drug has an impact on which event during the spreading of this virus. We are able to identify that. For example, we want to increase the speed the immune system reacts in, and we want to slow down the transcription of the virus. So it is possible to find more than one drug that can be used in combination. And this new method is called computational systems pharmacology. And basically, it's not just a method that can be used for this disease, but it is used for discovering potential combinations that can be used for other diseases as well. I just gave you an example of COVID here. And as I end my words, I would like to refer to Einstein. He says everything should be made as simple as possible, but not simpler. And through all these studies, while we were creating the simulation and modeling of molecules, we try to simplify things as much as possible so we can better understand and better explain them. I mean, the interactions between protein, we try to demonstrate it as if it's a dance. So we have some visual techniques that we use, and we also see how they work in great harmony within the cell. And of course, what's very important is that these findings are verified with experiments. So it requires teamwork, a multidisciplinary teamwork. So I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone who put effort into all of our studies and who I am honored to be working with, both all the researchers in my lab and all the science people that I collaborated with. And I would like to thank the Vehbi Koç Foundation board members and selection committee members who deemed me worthy of this award. And finally, I would like to thank my family who has always supported me, my mother and father particularly, and my children and my dear husband. And once again, I would like to thank you very much. I am honored to be granted this award, who is named after Vehbi Koç, a very important figure in Turkish history. Thank you for listening to me. Distinguished Professor Yvette, as a medical student at the very beginning of her journey, I would like to render my emotions to you. As a student of the Koç University Medical School, my parents had a great impact on me making this choice, and especially my mother and her struggle against the disease of our age was very influential. And as I am moving along my journey, receiving my education, I am understanding that my decision was very accurate. You are always paving the way for us as our respected elders, and you are inspiring us, and you are encouraging everyone who will dedicate their lives to this. Thank you for being by our side. Distinguished viewers, we have reached the end of the Vehbi Koç Commemoration and Awards Ceremony, and this award, I hope, will inspire people who work in education, culture, and arts. Thank you all very much.